Hi, this is Carrie with Canary Quilts, and I wanted to introduce you to this week's Friday freebie pattern. This is a zippered boxy bag. This is a great bag to carry cosmetics in. I keep my camera equipment in. You can even keep some candy in it, which I would do. This is a very easy sew, and it doesn't take a lot of materials. This is the medium-sized bag, and I have made this out of cork, and I show you in the video how easy it is to work with cork, and I've also appliqued some cork onto the front of it. I have a separate video on how I cut that applique out on my Cricut Maker. So thank you for watching this video, and I hope you enjoy making this bag. Welcome to Canary Quilts. You can get our free patterns in our free resource library located at canaryquilts.com. You can access this from the library access page. Scroll down the page to sign up for a free password to enter our free resource library, or click to enter the free resource library. Once in our free resource library, you will have access to all our free patterns and downloads. We put out a new free pattern every Friday. I hope you enjoy this video, and please subscribe to our channel so you will be notified of all our new content. Thank you. Okay, to get started on our boxy zippered pouch, I wanted to show you the materials that I'm going to be using for our boxy pouch. So I am going to be using cork as our outer fabric today, and then I cut these cork pieces here, these little leaves, that I'm going to be appliquing on the outside here of this outer cork piece. And this is the cork that I used to cut those leaves out of. So I've got my cork outer pieces, and there's two of them, and I've got my lining pieces right here, which there's two of them, and this is called Wilderberry or Wilderberry by the Gasly's line at Alexander Henry. I'm using Castine Sew Fuse interfacing. I'm trying this today, or I use Woven Fuse, which is very similar to Pellin's SF101. Except you don't need water to fuse this on. It takes like 10 to 15 seconds dry to fuse this interfacing on. So this is my lining with the interfacing. This is going to be my handle, and I'm going to interface that also. And so I've got Superior Thread So Fine thread that I'm going to be doing all my piecing with. And then I've got this very shiny, beautiful Gutermann Terra 40 thread that I'm going to be top stitching with. And then I've got regular scissors so I can cut the ends off of my zipper. I've got fabric cutting scissors. I've got this friction pen because we're going to have to mark a ½ inch here when we go in. And I've got a small ruler so that we can do that. And some clips. And that's about all you'll need for to put this together. So the applique, I'll be showing you how to do that, but you can use whatever thread or even kind of applique stitch you want to use for this. So the first thing I'm going to do is get these fused, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to applique these onto the cork. So the first thing I'm going to do is get these fused, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to applique these onto the cork. Okay, so I've got my pieces, my lining pieces and my handle piece fused with the interfacing. And then I went outside and I sprayed the back of my leaves with this quilt basting spray to make them sticky. And then I'm going to just stick those onto my cork here in the center, because we're going to be boxing this. So basically you're going to be seeing this section right here. So I'm just going to place my pieces. And I'm going to place them on top of each other. So I have 3 leaves going this way and 3 leaves going that way. And then I'm just going to applique the edges that you can see. So those are nice and stuck on there. So I'll do these in the center also. That stuff is sticky. So there, we've got those stuck on there now, and I'm gonna take these over to my Janome Horizon, which I can do like a blanket stitch or something on, and get these appliqued down. So I'm over here at my Janome Horizon, and I wanted to show you what I had set up to do the applique for this. So I've got my walking foot on. I've got a 116 needle in here for these thick fabrics that we're working with. And I'm using a 40 weight rayon thread for my top stitch. And then I've got it set on a blanket stitch over here with 2.0 length in my stitch. So I have several blanket stitches, and this is one of the shorter width ones that I have. So that's what I'm set up at my machine. And this is how it turned out. I haven't cut the threads, but that's how it turned out. So it is absolutely doable to applique cork onto cork. Okay, so to get started, we're gonna need one exterior piece, one lining piece, your zipper, and some clips, your friction pen, and a ruler. So we're going to start with our exterior piece here, and we're going to put the exterior piece face up, and then we're going to put our zipper face down, and just make sure you've got some hanging on either end, some extra zipper. And we're going to clip the zipper in place here. And then we're going to flip over our lining piece, and if you have a pattern that has a direction, you're going to want to make sure that the upper part goes up here by the zipper, so the pattern will read this way. But this fabric doesn't matter. So I'm going to line these up on the side with each other, the fabrics, and just clip this onto the zipper, right sides together. Not right sides together. Right side of the fabric, wrong side of the zipper. And then at this point, we are going to measure a 1/2 inch in from the edge of our fabric here. So right there, 1/2 inch. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew a 1/4 inch in between these two pieces, or not pieces, these two lines right here. And the reason we're doing that is when we put the sides together, we're going to want to be able to fold this out of the way to sew the zipper to this front piece, and then also the same thing on this side. We're going to want to be able to fold that out of the way to sew the zipper to the lining piece, and that way we don't have any exposed seams on the inside of our bag. So I'm going to go over and do a 1/4 inch stitch in between these lines. Okay, I'm set up over here at my machine. I have my zipper foot put in. I have a 116 needle in because I'm working with cork and it's a fairly stiff fabric. And then I'm going to, and I've got my Sew Fine thread in my top, in my needle, and in my bobbin. So I'm going to move forward and I'm going to start sewing on that pink line that I drew. And I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and the end here. And the nice thing about this foot is it is a 1/4 inch wide. So you may need to move your zipper as you're going along to help you get that nice 1/4 inch. stopping and back stitching at that pink line. So you can see it better here, the stitching and where it stops. And since we're working with cork, we can't iron, so we'll just take it over and we'll finger press these down. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go over and put the other side of our outer fabric and our lining onto this side of the zipper. So I've added the lining and the cork to the other side of the zipper. I just lined it up with the one that was already sewn on there. I've got my marks, and now I'm going to sew in between those marks. And this is where I want to move the zipper out of my way. Okay, so now we'll just finger press this side down, and we've got both sides added to our zipper. Okay, at this point I'm ready to top stitch these down, and I've got my Gutermann Terra 40 thread in for top stitching, and I've got my walking foot on, and I'm going to just mark where, just a light mark where we started sewing, because that's where I'm going to want to start sewing my top stitch. I'm going to want to start at that mark and then end at this mark down here. So all I'm doing is just kind of lifting it up, putting a little mark on the outside of the fabric. That's where I want to stop and start my top stitch. I'm going to carefully move my zipper out of the way, and I'm going to, I pull on my bottom or my lining fabric and my top fabric to keep that seam there pulled tight, and I'll do that all the way down. And I'm going to do 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Right there's where I start. I'm going to do a 3.5 inch stitch length. And like I said, I'm going to hold these fabrics. I'm going to pull them so that they don't get bunched up. And back stitch at the beginning and the end. And at this point, I'm just going to move my zipper out of the way. And I can see the little mark I made. And I went up to that mark and I back stitched. So we'll do the same thing on the other side. And there's our top stitching on our zippered box pouch. Okay, to do the strap for our bag, I've got one done, and I wanted to show you how I got to that. So what we're going to do is fold it in on itself halfway, and you'll press it, and then you'll come back and press the outer edges into the center, like this. And so once those are pressed, then you'll be able to fold it over like this. You can give it another press, and then you can top stitch it at 1/4 of an inch from the edge, just like that one. So that's how we're going to do our... So it's at this point that you want to do your strap, because your machine is loaded with that top stitch thread, and that's what we want to use here. And I used the 3.5 inch stitch length on this one, It looks a little more professional. So I'm going to also get this one stitched. So this will be the last of our top stitching. You won't need your top stitch thread. We're just going to be putting our bag together. Okay, next thing we want to do is lay our bag out here. And we're going to flip it so that the exterior pieces are right sides together, and we're going to pin it along this bottom here. And we are going to stitch a half inch seam along the bottom here. Now we're going to turn it over and we're going to pin the lining together, but we aren't going to stitch all the way across our lining. I've made marks here that are 4 inches apart in the center so that we can leave an opening to pull our bag through later. So right here are the marks, and I'm going to sew a half an inch from the edge into this mark. So we'll get those sewn together, and then I'll show you how to put the sides together. I have done the seams and I've left an opening over here. And since we're working with cork, you can't iron this fabric over here, but you can iron the lining. So I'm going to go over to my iron and I'm going to iron this open. And even though we have an opening here, when we're done, these two creases will line up really good so that they'll sew together. So I'm going to go over to my iron and I'm going to iron my lining open like that. Okay, I've got my lining ironed open. So now we are actually going to start closing up the sides of this bag. So let's make sure our zipper's open. Don't open it too much, especially if you're using a zipper tape. You don't want it to come off the end, but you want it to be open most of the way there, if you can see inside there. So we're going to, you need to pull this down like this. And I'm not going to worry too much about the lining right now. I'm working with the exterior. And I want to line up this seam with the center of my zipper. And I'm going to pin my my exterior pieces together. Not going to pin the lining pieces. I'll show you how we get those out of the way right now. So I'm holding this lining out of the way so I can pin. So when we go over to the sewing machine, we'll just kind of pull this back here. Just kind of pin it. And then when we go to the sewing machine, we'll hold this back, sew our seam and catch our zipper. And we'll do that on both sides. And then when we're done with this side, we'll do the exact same thing for our lining. And this will be sewn shut, or it won't be sewn shut, but you'll have to pull this side back also and sew your lining. But we'll start with the exterior pieces, and I'm going to get ready for both sides. So I'm going to line my zipper up with the seam and pin only the exterior. So when you're sewing also, you're going to want to sew this flat, your seam allowance flat. So I'm going to move my lining out of the way and get my seam allowance pinned. I'll do the same thing on this side. And this side's just a little more difficult because it's not, the zipper isn't sewn shut. So there we go. We got this side ready to go. We got this side ready to go, and I'll take you over to the machine and show you exactly how I'm going to do that. So there's my stitch. You can see how close I got to the lining. We're going to do that on the other side also. So we're just going to hold our fabric out of the way, our lining fabric. Do our 1/2 inch stitch, double stitch over the zipper. Double stitch over the zipper and finish it out. So now we're going to pin our lining just like we did our exterior pieces. So we're going to use our zipper foot, but this time when we flip it over, we're going to hold this fabric back and we're going to sew right along there with our zipper foot. So you want to remember to sew over the zipper and hold your fabrics back that you just sewed down. You can use an awl, use your fingers. So there's our seam. Same thing on the other side. Okay, now that we've got everything sewn together on the sides, I'm going to just clip these off with my scissors that aren't made for fabric. And then we're gonna cut the boxes out of these edges. And you'll cut it out at whatever size bag you're making. You'll have to look at the specifications in my pattern for that. So I'm going to be marking just this, the lining side, and then I'll cut both fabrics at the same time. So I'll take my fabric scissors, and it's sandwiched, so I'm going to cut both into both fabrics. And you'll do that on all 4 sides. So now we're ready to box these out, and the way you do that is you fold these so they're straight like this. So we'll be sewing right along there. So at this point we're going to want to put our handle on, and I'm going to put it on so that it goes from on the side, and you can grab it like that. And this side is where my zipper will pull to open the bag, and that's the side I want it on. So I'm going to do that first. I'm going to flatten this side. Actually, I'm going to put the bottom side of the handle onto my seam, and I'm going to pin it, and then I'm going to straighten my seam out, or straighten this out where we cut it. And pin that. And then take this pin out and pin it. And you want to sew this down also. So this is where we're going to be sewing right here with a 3/8 inch seam. So I'm going to get that sewn and show you how to finish the other side. So we're going to go to the other side. We're going to find our strap and we're going to clip it in like that on the other side against the seam, and we're going to hold that seam open, and we're going to straighten this side out just like the other side. Pin it. And then go over and do our 1/4 inch seam on this side also. So I've got the other side without the strap ready to go, and I wanted to show you what that was like to sew. And this side just is kind of flat on its own, so I'm just going to sew it. Then we do the same thing for the lining. Okay, I've got all my boxes sewn, and it was all exactly the same as the first two I showed you. So we'll find where we left this opening and start gently pulling everything through. And the cork's a little stiffer, so it's going to be just a little bit more work. So we'll now push our bag out. Push our corners. I'm just using my fingertip. Kind of give it an inspection, make sure everything has been caught. And if everything looks good, then we'll be able to sew this opening shut. And because we ironed it open, we've got this nice, it's just lays nice and flat. So we'll just do a small stitch right next to the edge of this opening. So I'm going to go do that. So there's the small stitch to close the lining up. So now we can tuck that in. Just push those corners out. And we got ourselves a cute little boxy bag. With an applique, and I got that centered pretty good, and a little handle right there to grab it with. And you're all done at that point. There's nothing left to do. So give yourself a little pat on the back that you made yourself this beautiful boxy bag. Thank you very much for watching this video, and as you can see, I've done this bag in 3 different sizes, and I've also done it in a vinyl fabric. So you can head over to my website and grab the dimensions for all 3 sizes. Thank you.